Hey, it's Yay for Yarn, and today I'm going to show you how to do an E-wrap cast on your Addi Knitting Machine. So let's get started. So for this project, I'm going to use an E-wrap cast on, which creates a pretty straight, clean edge, and it has a little bit of give in it. And the most important thing about casting on with the Addi is that if you're doing a cast on that's supposed to be permanent, as opposed to just putting the yarn in front of and behind the needles to create a temporary cast on. When you're doing a permanent cast on the Addi, the most important thing is that it has to be able to be tightened when you go to finish your project, because on the Addi, with all of the needles stretching the fabric and holding it so that it's stretched when you go to cast on, if your cast on cannot be tightened at the end, then it's going to end up with a ruffled edge because the cast on edge is going to be very stretched out compared to the rest of the fabric. So to do an E-wrap cast on, all we're doing is making a loop. And to make this loop, you're going to take your two fingers, your thumb and your forefinger, and you're going to twist the yarn. I have the yarn running over the top of those two fingers, and you're going to twist it. And the direction you twist it is important, because I want the yarn that's going to be the working yarn to be underneath the other one. So I have the yarn running over the top of my thumb and forefinger, and I'm going to twist it to the left so that my tail yarn is running behind and the working yarn is running in front. And then when I turn that face down to go over the needle as a loop, then the working yarn is going to be underneath the yarn from the tail. So that is going to be the first stitch. I'm going to bring that needle down so that it stays. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to put my two fingers under the yarn, twist them to the left so that it creates a loop where that the working yarn is going underneath the yarn from the stitch before. Then I'm going to put that into the hook of the next needle and bring the needle down. So I'm making each loop go over the hook of the needle, and the most important thing is that the working yarn always goes underneath the yarn that's coming from the previous stitch. And you're basically just making loops around each needle, but it's a twisted loop, so then that way it stays, it's permanent, and it can be tightened at the end. So I'm going to cast on a total of 10 stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can see how quick and easy a cast on this is. And so I'm just going to make sure that my last needle with the cast on stitch drops. My working yarn goes behind this red tab so that when I go to knit the other direction, then my yarn will not come undone. My last stitch will not come undone or be all wonky. And as when you're working with an E-wrap cast on, as each stitch comes up, you may need to encourage it to pop down to the base of the needle. Even though it's not tight, it just needs a little bit of encouragement to get down to the bottom. So just always keep that in mind as you're knitting the first row with an E-wrap cast on. So now we're going to tighten up the cast on, and as you can see, the cast on, no matter what kind of cast on you do that's a permanent cast on, is going to be all stretched and loose because of the knitted fabric being stretched across the Addi machine. So what you're going to do to tighten this up is, here is the starting tail of our yarn. You're going to go to the opposite edge, and you're going to find the first loop of fabric, the first loose loop of yarn that's coming off of the corner of this piece. Then you're going to find the one next to it, the next loose loop next to it, and pull on it to tighten up the first one. Then you're going to find the next loop and pull on it, and the next loop and pull on it, and each loop that you pull on helps tighten up the one before it. And you're going to accumulate a bunch of slack every time you go to pull another loop, because as you keep going, you're pulling more and more slack out of this edge. And there's still some give in it, there's still some stretch in it. I'm not pulling it tight where that it doesn't stretch anymore. So then I'm going to pull this next one, and when it looks like all you have left to do is pull on the tail, sometimes the tail doesn't want to be pulled. So what you're going to do is tug on the tail a little bit and find the strand of yarn that the tail is pulling. So this is the tail right here, and if I want to pull the tail out of the fabric, I would pull up. So I'm going to pull from the other direction, which pulls on that loop of extra yarn and tightens it up. And then I can go ahead and pull on the tail to tighten up the cast on. And this is what the finished E-wrap cast on looks like. It's a very clean, straight edge. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If this was helpful to you, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.